Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. It is Thursday, the 2nd of April. I'm going to kind of buy a bit of time here to let everybody trickle in. You're going to notice at the bottom of your screen, we still have the section for asking questions, but to the right of that, there's a new section for the polls, and we would love to get everybody to jump in on that and answer those questions so we can get a bit of a feel in terms of who's here for the audience today. So if you could just take a quick second and click on that down below and pick your answer. And again, there's still time to be submitting some questions. So the ask a question section is also right there if there was something that you were hoping to get answered today. We've put the topics that we'll be covering today in there. So if there is something specific to any of those topics, you can go ahead and just put that in based on those things. How is everybody feeling today? If you want to go, just drop us a quick little emoji or let us know kind of how you're feeling and where your head's at. That helps us kind of determine the flow of the conversation as well. Nobody. Crickets. Uh-oh. Oh, Melissa's feeling upside down. So again, I'm just going to repeat what I just said in case we have some new people joining us. So you'll notice at the bottom there are two sections, one for asking a question specific to each of the topics we'll be covering today. And then if everybody could just jump in on the poll section as well and answer the poll so we can get a good idea in terms of where everybody's at. Yes, David, sun is out and shining. It's beautiful. Hey, Josh, thanks for joining. All right, well, it's 2:02. We're going to get this started, and hopefully we give you some great advice today that you're going to be able to implement into your business right away and start making some moves in a direction that's going to help you grow through this. So without further ado, we have Melissa, who is going to talk to us a little bit about identifying new opportunities and how she adopted online. And then, of course, we have John also joining that is known for his creative thinking and how coming up with new ideas were for businesses to pivot and to shift and be just really clear on the direction that they're going. So I will let you start, Melissa, and kind of talk us through a little bit of what you experiencing having to jump online and get a little bit more serious in that area.
Yeah, so for us, we had set up our new business's website on Shopify, which at the time I wasn't too sure about because we weren't really doing e-commerce at the time. But as our business started growing, even the past few months, e-commerce was a really great thing for us to have started adopting. And obviously now it's been really great that we've already had this all set up. I'm sure most of you already know this by now, but Shopify right now has a 90-day free trial. So if you're not set up yet on an e-commerce platform, or if you're looking for something maybe temporary to set you up, Shopify is a really great resource and it's really easy to learn. So they have a bunch of articles and stuff, and we have a few people in town that consult as well for Shopify. So that means that they'll be able to teach you anything maybe more in depth that you need help with. So for us, we are an escape room company. So our service is face-to-face. And once we realized that we were going to be shut down, because obviously non-essential, we try to think of different ways that we can kind of pivot our business. So a lot of this has to do with really being educated on what the government is putting out, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, because that's super important. You don't want to be putting people at risk. You also don't want to be putting your business at risk either to face maybe a fine or something worse. So we started going heavy with our e-commerce and selling our board games, which we are still doing to this day. You have to also make sure that your supply chain is in working condition. Right now, we were hit with our supply chain being down for about a week, and we didn't know if it would go back up. So if you are kind of heading into the e-commerce world to try to shove your business kind of in that direction, make sure your business chain order, otherwise it might cause more problems for you later on. So that was our big thing. And then restaurants are now allowed to deliver alcohol with food, and because that our business is a licensed food premise, we were able to add that to our orders as well. So I think a lot of it really has to do with educating yourself. And the marketing aspect of it too is that being able to pivot your business and maybe think about more things that you can offer is keeping your business top of mind for your customers. So I know a lot of people have been struggling with how they could market at this time, and it doesn't necessarily need to be just like pushing sales, but it could just be general awareness about your business, which is something that we're working on right now too. And it all kind of works together as a package on how we can pivot our business right now. Because as we are more active on social media, talking to our customers about this, we're actually getting a lot of really great suggestions of what people would love to see. So we put it out as a poll to basically ask our customers what they would want to see. And one of our ideas was a virtual escape room kind of. So taking our escape room facility and basically setting it up kind of like this, where multiple customers can log on and guide a host throughout the experience. And we weren't sure if it'd be well received. And I think we had over 200 votes on that poll, and the majority of it was an overwhelming yes. So I really encourage you to engage with your clients if possible to see what they're looking for. So that would be my advice at this time.
Yeah, I really agree with you, because I think there's also an opportunity to show your audience right now that you're the expert in the area that you specialize in. Now, I know this is a little bit off topic, but Melissa and I had a conversation, have been having a lot of conversations over the last little while, but we were talking a little bit about how this CERB is working for incorporated business versus sole proprietors. So I think we're going to need to really kind of keep an eye on how that evolves. Because as an incorporation, if you're not taking a paycheck, you could still essentially collect CERB while making sales. But at this point, it's looking like as a sole proprietor, if you make a $5 sale, you're no longer eligible for CERB whatsoever. So I just want to caution people in that. So when Melissa, you spoke about just really kind of being aware of what you're eligible for and kind of what the guidelines are for those programs, I think it's going to be really important to not try to mess with the system, because they're already threatening some serious fines in that area. So sorry to kind of jump away from the topic that we were talking about, but I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that today. John, can you talk to us a little bit about kind of how your head works when it comes time to having to generate ideas for other business owners and how they could be taking advantage of some opportunities right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things to remember, and this has helped me, it's been an ongoing process to adjust my thinking, but some of it's just having permission to sell. And that's part of what we want to do today, because we understand that you're going to be hesitant to sell right now, and that's okay, because it means you're human, and it means you're sensitive. But we don't want to stay there. It is okay to sell right now, and you should be selling. Some brands need to be more sensitive. So if you're hesitant, be grateful for that perspective. But I think the key comes into how you frame or understand what selling is. And if I could reframe it to say that selling is helping, naturally your perspective and your tone is going to shift significantly. And then what you're going to be focused on is your customer, which you should be as anyways, as opposed to your product and how do you get your product going. You should be focusing on your customer and how can you help them utilizing your product and services. So that reframing of what it is, I think will help a lot of you. I know it's certainly helped me even in the way that I talk about what I do. So that's the first step. But then you got to get creative in terms of identifying the opportunities, right? And Melissa was a good example of how she could make that pivot to being online. As a business, you have to be really clear on what audience you serve, and they all face problems or they have a desire that they're looking to attain. And so you help them either overcome that problem or attain that desire. And now it's just understanding that for some, it's the same. But for a lot of people, physical distancing is shifting that. Problems might be a little different. Desires might be a little different. And so try to understand your audience, engage your audience, and figure out what is it that they need, what is it that they desire in this time, and can you still serve that? Can you still help that? It just might look a little different how you do so, but I think that focus will help a lot of you in terms of giving you some ideas on how you can do that. Because for some, it's going to be the same, but for others, it could look a lot different. I think the other thing that's important for a lot of us to remember is for many of us, we're in business, so our income's tied to the economy. So we are definitely on the side of those who are affected and impacted in terms of lower income. And a lot of people have lost it, and it's unfortunate. But there's also still so much of the market that hasn't. And so there's still needs out there. There's still people trying to kill time and entertain themselves and adjust to life at home. And you can still meet those needs, and they're still able to consume. So having balance in how you understand your audience and see what's going on, I think is really helpful in this time. And then from there, I mean, you heard Melissa's example and story about shifting online. That's great, and a lot of you can do that, but there's a lot who can't. And so some of it might be getting creative in terms of how you deliver that product. So maybe there's incorporating delivery services that way. Now, for some, that's going to be a lot harder than others, but it's getting a bit creative that way. And for some, I mean, Braden had a unique story that he shared with me the other day, and maybe you can jump in here, Braden, to share that of how he was interacting with the brand that had a creative way to keep business.
I can. What story did I tell you? I don't.
Subaru.
Oh yeah. I got a great email from my dealership. So I mean, I obviously pay attention to a lot of ads because we help a lot of brands with marketing, and I kept seeing like Mercedes ads pop up, and they're just running what was supposed to run in March, and it's coming across like really tone deaf and sort of really just not useful for everyone. But my Subaru dealership, they sent me an email last week, and it was like, we've adapted our service. Showroom is shut down, but service is open. This is how we're making our service safe. And it was basically they were doing like full pickup drop off. So they'll come to my house, they'll pick up the car, they'll take it to the shop, they'll clean it, they'll do the work, they'll clean it again, they'll bring it back, and they'll drop it off. And it was just that peace of mind is that time of the year where I need an oil change in May. I need to get my winter tires off. And it was like, oh, if I don't actually have to think about this, they solved the problem before I even thought about the problem. And it was just really proactive in the way they approached, that's a $200 sale for them. Right. And I don't have to do anything. And so all I have to do is give them my keys when they show up at the house. And so they sort of thought ahead on how can we solve the problem that you're going to have, before you do. And it's just being really conscious of, what is your audience and what is your market looking at and doing right now. So I thought that was a really great one, because it was something I was thinking about. If this keeps going, like, I'm going to have to figure out what to do with my car, and are they open, right? Do I have to deal with that? And do I have to book an appointment? And they just proactively reached out and were like, hey, if you need it, it's here, schedule it. We'll handle everything. And I thought that was a really great approach.
Yeah. And that certainly adds costs, but it still allows you to maintain revenue, and more importantly, maintain relationship, and in a lot of ways stand out. And so don't underestimate the opportunity you have, even though it may add some additional cost, because for a lot of us, just keeping revenue is the top priority, even if we're making a little bit less profit on it. But that relationship is incredibly valuable, especially for when we get through this. So don't lose sight of what the impact of that. And then Dave's actually going to be speaking to this later, but for some of you, it's still fulfilling that same purpose and that same vision, but it might look entirely different. And so if you can remain focused on that and identify the needs of your audience, then yeah, maybe what you do is different. But in terms of upholding the brand and being in a position to maintain those relationships as we get through this, that's invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. And I love Melissa's idea, how she pulled her existing people and got an amazing response. I also think there's an opportunity here for some micro work. So if you do offer packages or like an all day something of your services, how can you chunk that down into bite-sized pieces and offer smaller pieces of what that is that will still help someone with at a lower cost, and obviously taking less of your time? What do you think of that type of thing, John?
Sorry, can you repeat the end there?
Yeah, so like in terms of people who do have like a suite of services where they offer maybe a full day package of something, if they break them down and do it into more micro pieces so that it is maybe a little bit more affordable for their audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I think we're even doing right now in terms of offering at least our perspective and in our thinking on the circumstance. It's not refined. We're reacting and trying to help. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that as well within your industry, breaking down and providing small components that's going to kickstart them being able to work through and still meet their need. You just might play a smaller role. But at the same time, for some people, maybe it's expanding, right? Serve the same customer base, but maybe expand your service a little bit. It's just, if you're to go out and find new customers for what you already do, right now is a hard time to do that. For some, it will be easy just with the opportunity of ad spends and stuff, and that is completely dependent on how your industry is doing. But I think focusing on how you can get creative with that, yeah, that's a good idea there, Katie.
I think this is a bit of an, Melissa, did you have something else that you wanted to add? No?
No, I basically agree with everything that John has said. It's so hard because it very much does vary from industry to industry. Like, we are in entertainment, so for us, it was easy to start marketing away from escape rooms and more into board games because our general demographic enjoys doing things like games or puzzles. So for us, although we were selling board games in the past too, it wasn't as big of a driver for us. But that was kind of a parallel business that we could kind of go after fast to hopefully make something at this point. So I do think that maybe even brainstorming different ideas to try to figure out maybe something that's related to you, that would work for your customer demographic at this time might be beneficial. But I also think that it's going to be a hard balance of, like, obviously you want to figure out what can help you right now, but if you don't want to put too much time into something that might be super temporary and small, which sinks more money and time into something that just might not be as fruitful as you were expecting. So I'm also wary of people just maybe panic jumping into something that might not be more beneficial for them long term.
Yeah, that's actually a great point that you just made. Where was I going? I had something. It's gone. What are your thoughts on pricing right now, John? Kind of a bit of a segue into doing these types of things, because I know for myself, I offered a half-day strategy session, and I would probably not enjoy sitting in a Zoom call for half a day. So I've essentially knocked that down in half, and obviously reduced what that price was, trying to be more of a community driven thing, but also still being respectful that I also need to survive. So I think it's really important that people know their worth and know their value too. So, like, what are your takes on that in terms of helping somebody strategize what that looks like?
Yeah, the question we're all asking is, should I discount?
Yeah.
Plain and simple, no, but it's complicated because there is a time to discount, but when you do, you have to do it right. And what you should focus on is value. You cannot compromise or undermine your value, and you cannot dig a hole that when we get through this, you're trying to get out of that hole and you're prolonging your own suffering period. That, I think, is the hidden danger of trying to discount, even if with good intentions and helping people. There's just a way to do it that doesn't compromise your value. And that's what we want to focus on, is maintaining the value of your product or service, just to maintain when we get through this. Now, if you're going to discount, and there's a variety of ways to do that, and I'm aware there's more than I'm even aware of. But some things you can consider is a free value add or a discounted value add. So the Subaru example that Braden shared is a perfect example of that, right? They don't provide that service all the time. A lot of companies will provide a similar service that allows you to get to work and so on. But you think about, there's 4 trips included in that, in the gas and so on. It comes at high cost, but it allowed him to actually still do business. And so the value of what they provide is still the same. They just made it more accessible. So there's ways that you can do that. I know several brands who are still selling the products for sticker price, but they're including free shipping, right? So there's things you can do that's not going to compromise the value of your product. But then others have a bit more flexibility. Zoom did something really cool in terms of giving unlimited minutes to the free plan. And so again, that's a value add. And it's really, that one's nice because it's helping everyone who's trying to connect with people, right? And these aren't people that are using it for business. These are people trying to connect with loved ones and maintain relationship in a time of physical distancing. And so that not only underscored their vision and their purpose from a brand perspective, but it didn't compromise the value that they're offering to businesses in their primary markets. If you're gonna, if it's just straight up, someone can't afford it, you still want to help them out, and you're just going to give them a discount, make it a one-time discount. Your invoice should be the same. Put on the invoice what the discount is. Moving forward, they understand what the value of that product or service is. That's something that I do quite regularly when I work with not-for-profits or causes that I want to support, and they don't have the budget, where this is the value of what's being done, because they're going to be talking with people and so on, right? And I want them to understand, but I will happily give you a discount to support that cause. And this is a good time that you could implement that as well. And then the other thing is, yeah, sometimes it is going to be a discount, but that should very much be focused on relationship building, especially with your best existing customers. There's a lot of opportunities to do that. If you're discounting to attract people, that's where I think you're in danger of digging that hole that's going to be hard to recover from afterwards. So yeah, focus on not undermining your own value. Still be a human, still show compassion, but just don't devalue your own product and service. So I don't think there's a clear-cut answer, but no. But when you do it right.
Yeah, I think that's 100% important, just setting that expectation too, right? So if that organization or if that potential client comes back later and is also still anticipating that same cost, at the very least, you can go back and say, I actually showed you what the real value of was, that the circumstances have changed, the scenario has changed. Therefore, I'm honoring going back to like my original game plan in terms of what I was selling that service or that product for.
Yeah, and great. Sometimes people are down and out, and you just need to help them, and that's okay, right? But that's a case-by-case scenario. And so that's where the general perspective is no, but certainly there's special exceptions.
100%. I think it's also a great time right now for people to try things, try different things, what takes, what doesn't take, what do you get a response from? If somebody wants to take a DIY approach, you're seeing a lot of people right now, a lot of makers making DIY kits, a lot of artists doing painting lessons. I mean, it's really no difference for a service or a product-based business. So like for Melissa, for example, if she could create like a game and drinks, and it's a date night thing, and you just kind of target and have that language, I think there's a lot of value in that also right now. So again, just being really specific and trying to target your audience as specific as you can so that they literally feel like you're speaking to them. So when they do see your post, you are having that conversation with them, they're like, holy shit, she read my mind. I got to buy this thing, or I've got to play this game because it's exactly how I'm feeling right now, sitting in my pajamas on day 3 and I haven't showered, and I should probably play Scrabble and learn something and get my mind going a little bit. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add, John, in terms of price?
No, I mean, we can circle back if people have some specific questions, but I think that generally covers it. I want to stay somewhat vague intentionally. Hopefully that provides some strategy and context, but it is case by case, and I don't want to be, I don't want to be overly principled on it in the sense that it could discourage people in the wrong scenario.
I was going to add to John there, I think the other thing you can do now is you can be creative in how you bill your clients, especially if you're like a service-based industry, right? So, like myself and John and Mike as well, where we don't have necessarily a physical product to hand somebody, but we work on creative. We just did a project this week where we normally do 60% upfront, 40% at the end of a project, and we've broken that into 4. And so, over the next 4 months, we're going to get 25% of that, even if we finish the job next week. And we did that so that, one, we have a bit of predictable cash flow, but two, like, there's a lot of businesses that have monthly reoccurring revenue from subscriptions or for different things like that. And so for them, they know that, the cash flow over the next 4 months is okay, but dropping, a lot of money today on something is going to inhibit them from that. So there's lots of different ways where you can also just get creative in how you create your invoices and how you bill for your work, not just in how you price your work. And I would echo John, is like, we don't discount our work really ever, but we get really creative with how do we support a client through something in challenging times to make sure that that we're still doing high level work for people.
Exactly. Now I know,
Yeah, good point.
Peter McMartin had the question about how to price in this market. I'd love to know if you feel like we've answered the question, or if you had a follow-up question. If you want to just kind of either go back to the question section, or you can do it right in the chat, that would be great, and we can circle back if you did still want to dig a little bit deeper on that topic. Melissa, do you have anything else to add? Did you have any struggles with trying to price kind of how the board games were? Did you already have a structure in place and it just didn't change moving from physical to being online?
For the board game specifically, we just kept the same prices, just your MSRPs, I believe. But for the escape rooms, that's going to be a bigger challenge. So we're going to be moving into doing walkthroughs of our games. Basically, we'll have different cameras set up in our games where there's a human proxy in the game, and your team can kind of tell this human how to interact with the space. So for that, it's a bit more challenging to try to figure out the pricing model for something like that, because our regular prices are $25 plus tax per person, and you're in a floor to ceiling immersive environment. So it's a bit of research. I think some other escape room companies have already started adopting this model. So I think a lot of it will have to do with thinking about how they are pricing it and if it'll work in a market like Kingston and surrounding areas. Because in theory, if we do adopt this, which we should be able to release hopefully by next week, anyone across the world in theory could play one of our games. So I think it's something where it needs to be lower than our regular ticket price, because although it'll still be a fun experience, it's not going to be the same hands-on escape room experience where you're in a room. So it's not necessarily going to be a discount, though. It's almost like a completely different service based on what we already offer at a lower price, just because it's not the same experience. So I think there's just so many different things that you need to take into account when trying to figure out pricing. But at this point, I don't think there's any wrong way of going about it. Just like, it might take some experimenting, but I think as long as you're really open and honest with your customer or your client, and like John said, just making a discount line instead of it looking like this is your actual normal price, I think that's the best way to go for right now, at least.
Amazing. Poor Rob in the comments here. He's saying he still hasn't figured out that last escape room that he's playing. Don't give him any tips. Let's see how long before he figures it out. Any questions in terms of pricing? I'm not seeing anything come in the comments on the right-hand side. Or shall we just continue to kind of move on? I think we're good. I didn't hear anything back from Peter, so hopefully we answered his question. We're going to jump to Rob now. I would love to see in the comments how many people follow Rob on Instagram, Stone City Woodworks. Anybody here follow Rob?
Probably not too many.
What is it? You have 28,000 followers?
I think something along there. Yeah. 28,000 on Instagram and then 58,000 on TikTok.
I think my favorite part, well, aside from the epoxy pores, because that's definitely very soothing to the eyes, is how real and how raw you are about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, you're not just putting on a front. A lot of people portray that life is good, everything is going super amazing. But when you're not afraid to go to a hardware store and talk about how warped their wood is and all of that stuff. And I think that that's really cool. So how did you get to the point where you were comfortable enough that you just didn't give a shit anymore?
Honestly, it took a long time. Like when you're standing there somewhere, I still, when I am at a hardware store and I'm standing in an aisle and I'm like this, I still look around at the corner of my eye because it's still awkward, right? But it took a long time for me to get comfortable with the story side of it. But now, honestly, I get messages like that one literally just came in from people. If I don't do stories, I will get messages asking if I'm okay. So it's one of those things. It's just people ask me all the time, how do you do it and work? And I've just really somehow managed to be able to put it into my workflow. At the beginning, this is a long time. Like my Instagram's been slowly growing for 5-6 years now. It wasn't one of these overnight things. And I just want to touch on that really quickly. If you have an Instagram account, TikTok account, any account, like the main thing is having an actually engaged audience. It doesn't matter what that follower number is. A lot of people get really hung up on the follower number. As long as your audience, you could have 100 people. As long as they're engaged, then they're your audience. Like, you have accounts, and I'm sure we all get emails, oh, you can buy this many followers for this much. You're just wasting your money because, one, the number doesn't matter, and what you want is people who actually care about you and your products. So that's the biggest thing when it comes to using social media to your advantage. Make sure that it's an engaged audience, make sure that it's people that truly do care, and if you can, educate them. That's my favorite part. That's why when I do stories, the only time I delete it and start over again is if I swore by mistake. Because I don't want my, it's for kids too and stuff, so I try to keep it PG. But if I screw something up or if I fumble over my words, it's going up anyway because that's just who I am.
Yeah, my 15-year-old daughter follows you, and the other day when you posted that picture of your laptop with the Timmies, she came up to me and was like, why is your face on his computer? And it was almost like I made it. It was my big break in life because you posted something with my face on it. So we had a good laugh because she follows me, but I'm sure she doesn't pay attention to anything that I post, right? I think that's a really valuable information in terms of nurturing and building relationships with the people that they've already bought into you. They're already committed to following along and liking, and they enjoy what you do. So why not take care of those relationships instead of worrying about trying to find new ones? And that's actually very similar to what John was mentioning earlier about it being easier to maintain and get income from existing clients versus trying to find new ones. It's way more expensive to go and try and find new ones, right? So I like that. And I love when you get spammed and you post about it. Like I said, it really does show what the realities are up there whenever you do get those larger followings, right?
Yeah, no, and it's constant. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that I was never one of those people that followed my following number every single day. I would check the followers. I would check what posts did best. What hashtags did I use? Why did I only get 2 followers today when I got 20 yesterday? I honestly let it consume my life for a good 6 to 8 months. And it was the worst time because I was more concerned about that than actually putting out a good product, or even more, like I had forgotten about the people that already were following me and I wasn't giving them any value. And it was like, I didn't want to lose them. So as soon as I got over that, it's been great ever since. It's obviously a marketing tool. But I also use it as community. Like some of my truly have become my best friends are all across Canada, all across the States. I talk to guys in Sweden. I talk to guys in Australia, just like they were sitting here in the room with me. One of my best friends is in Boston and we've never met.
Is that the one that you made the bar?
No, he's in New York. He's in Clayton.
Okay. It's funny because you just mentioned something that Melissa mentioned earlier too about just kind of like how it's really important to just almost like to not let it get to you, like you talked about, like the likes and the comments. I mean, I think it's important to respond when people do comment or when they do engage. I'd be curious to know, and I feel like this is happening to Melissa also, is are people placing orders? Like, are they literally putting in an order for a table or for a stool or for something via Instagram?
Yeah,
so you are
I
still
would say
getting
Instagram has become, I'd say it's probably the third, well, it might be second now. It's from word of mouth. We still get a lot of action from our Facebook page, but I would say Instagram is definitely right up there. We get a lot of DMs, a lot of comments, and orders come through there. I've actually gotten a few comments from TikTok, or a few orders from TikTok, which I found pretty funny.
Yeah, see, Melissa's saying too that she also gets quite a bit of orders through Instagram.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, is that like Facebook is sort of falling down the ranks of importance. Instagram is still top dog, but TikTok is sliding right up in there.
I think it's going to happen fast. Yeah, just being able to control the algorithm is still a little bit more in that, right? And then so again, something that Melissa had mentioned earlier that you just brought up in terms of just being connected with your industry has played an important part as well, and gives you kind of a sounding board of people that you can turn to and find out kind of what they're doing. How it sounds like she's been on some calls with some other people that are in some of the escape room industry. And I've noticed just from following you how, like, when you go to the woodworking shows in Toronto and stuff, like it's like you've got a bunch of brothers and sisters that are doing the same thing as you. And it's not about competition. It's more about community. That's really cool.
That's actually one of our big hashtags in our little community there, is that it's a community over competition. And it is so true, because the only reason so my background is marketing, public relations. That's what I went to college for. I've only been doing this for 6 years. I hadn't touched tools since I was like 7 with my granddad. And it just happened to be a hidden talent that I guess I had, and I had no idea. And with the help of YouTube and other guys on Instagram, like, it's got me to where I am. And now I've been able to become one of the teachers and help the young guys coming up. So just, it's, if you're not using Instagram, or if you think that it's not valuable, you are missing out big time. And I can say that because I used to be in the print industry. So I've seen the complete change.
Absolutely.
Like magazines still alive and well, but other print stuff, not worth it.
Not so much. How do you decide what you share? I know I've seen a few times, I think there's I think he's local. I feel like he's 15, 16 years old, and he's doing things like charcuterie boards. And I see you share his stuff. And I mean, for obvious reasons, helping a kid out. But when it comes to like some people that you would consider competition, how do you determine when you share things? Is it something that has to kind of be in alignment with your views, or do you share anything and everything if somebody asks you to do that?
No, I have to know the person, not know them in person, but I need to, know what they stand for, and I keep an eye on what they're all about. And if they're a good person and helping others, then they, it absolutely goes up to something I would repost or what have you. Or again, young kids, just starting out, we'll always help them out. But there's been certain times where people literally just send me a message and say, hey, can you mention me in your stories? And like, people have even offered to pay, and I'm like, no. Like, I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you're all about. So I try and keep it as real as I can. And even with companies that we work with, like I have a couple tool companies that I work with that sponsor us, I guess you could say, and I only will promote products and services that I truly believe in or use myself.
Yeah, you just recently did a collaboration with Bosch, and Mike Wing is the one who took the pictures, right? Who we also have on the panel. Those were
incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome to see the collaboration. Does anybody else on the panel have anything to say about your online presence?
I guess the one thing I want to say before I forget is right now is the perfect time. If you haven't used your social medias, if you don't have them, it is the perfect opportunity right now to try them out. We're all guilty of pushing stuff. Marketing is the first to get pushed to the back, I find. But right now is the perfect opportunity to try a whole bunch of stuff out you've never tried before. It's the perfect time to keep engaged with your audience. Like Melissa was saying earlier, we also do a lot of polls. We do a lot of sticker questions. We do a lot of just interactive stuff. Just I do it because I do enjoy doing it, but it also keeps you top of mind. And the more engagement you have, and the more people will spread the word about you and your company. So it's the perfect opportunity right now to be doing that.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume that Danielle McAllister in the comments here says get on YouTube. Danielle, how many followers do you have on YouTube? I know it's something insane. Mike is also mentioning that he's looking into producing some content for YouTube. Yeah, see, Danielle has 19,000 followers on YouTube. YouTube, I believe, is the hardest place to grow an audience from what I'm hearing from a lot of people. So,
but it's also, did you know it's the second biggest search engine?
I'm not surprised. I didn't know that, but I'm not
so
surprised to hear that.
The only reason we're not on YouTube is because I don't have time to do it. So I need somebody like this guy, Brandon, to come in and help me out with that.
He's on this side of me.
In the middle.
Pointing the other way on my end. Rob, I got a question for you with your audience. Have you found you're changing your approach at all in the last couple of weeks? Like, have you tweaked your content, or are you publishing more now because you have a more engaged audience?
So going back to our conversation earlier this week, I've been lucky in the fact that we've had work booked and ready to go. We're months, we're booked until June. So I haven't had to change a whole lot. I definitely have been filming more with my GoPro, just so that down the road, when we do start to get towards the end of these projects, if there's nothing to share, that I have a bunch of B-roll basically that we can chop up and have for content for later on. But as far as my stories, engagement, that kind of thing go, I think the one thing that I've done more definitely is push more local people and more local businesses. And every time I go out, if we go out or not go out, but if I go to pick up dinner somewhere locally, I'm going to take a picture, post it in my story and tag them. I think if the more we can do to help each other locally, as small as you think it is, it's going to make a difference.
Sorry. Absolutely. I've been seeing a lot of that more too lately. Just looking at a comment coming in from Danielle. I watched the daily briefing this morning, and they called on YouTubers, TikTokers, streamers, etc., to push people to stay home. It's a legit thing. I mean, I'm in Frontenac County and was on a call today, and they were talking I've got B&Bs, I've got campsites that are trying to get ready to open because some of the people that go south, their summer home is a campground, and essentially the government is trying to tell them not to do that right now. Thanks, Danielle. That's a great point. The more people that can hear that, the better, right?
Well, it's the one thing I've noticed too is so I'm a country fan, so I follow a lot of country artists. And they're all doing concerts from their homes. Like Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood just did one last night from their house. And it's all about, we're still going to offer the entertainment, but you don't need to go anywhere to see it. Stay at home. Brad Paisley's been another big one recently that's been the big stay at home push. And, anybody who can get the message out there to stay home, we're all going to be better off quicker if people just stay home.
I must confess, I actually left the house today, and I'm kind of hiding out in our office, but I'm not planning on going anywhere else. I need to make a quick stop at the grocery store, but yeah, me, it was for internet. Yeah, me, it was for internet. Our internet at our home is not really reliable, and when you have 3 kids that are all on devices and I need to keep them quiet and entertained, I need my space. So my youngest one is if anybody, I know a lot of people have met her because sometimes they tag along with me, but she's a little shit, and she's starting to get brave enough where she'll come here when I'm on a video call and she'll do these little dances. Poor Mike had to see that earlier this week. So they're starting to get braver and a little bit more comfortable. So I'll apologize now to anybody that have calls with in the future, because there's a high likelihood you're going to see that kid.
It sounds like your daughter and my daughter would get along real well.
Anybody else have any questions in terms of online presence or anything specific they wanted to ask Rob? You can just drop that right in the comments. I also wanted to remind everybody, I feel like not everybody has answered the poll. So on the bottom It's on my right-hand side. There's an ask a question and a poll section. We dropped a poll in there, essentially asking kind of where you're at and where your headspace is at in terms of selling and marketing right now. So if you just want to take a quick minute to go and answer that if you haven't already, and we can, it just kind of really helps us figure out how we're going to move forward with the series. So Dave, Rob, if you don't have anything else to say in terms of online presence, we will move on to building community online. So we have Dave Robinson. Is he still here?
I'm bringing him back.
Okay. Has anybody else used this lovely software that we're using? I think it was amazing last week. The second that we ended, anybody that had the link for the registration was able to go and watch the replay. So that made our lives a hell of a lot easier.
Come on.
Excellent. Rob just dropped a comment here saying if anybody has questions, just to DM him. And of course, follow him with a little winky face. Good plug, Rob. Good plug.
I've invited Dave. There he is.
Hi there.
Hey, Dave. I'm sure you were able to hear, but just pivoting a little bit into talking about building community online and kind of what that's been like for you, who your core business is essentially building community and taking care of your people. So kind of what are some of the things that you've been doing or are hoping to do moving forward?
Yeah, it's been a challenge because I use the physical environment as one of my tools to facilitate conversations and connections. So, and I've always been kind of in love with how the environment, whatever it may be, has an influence on your attitude and then your ability to connect with others. So this has been a really challenging thing. I am not an expert of building online, but like most of us, we've had to learn how to adapt. I think I had the tendency to not speak in the beginning because I didn't know what to say. And then I realized, oh, we have to have a conversation with our customers. So we're trying to keep it informal. We're doing because we did a lot of parties here. We did a lot of social gatherings, which was really an effective tool for us to get people connecting and understanding each other. So we're going to do a call on Friday with our group and trying to keep it casual. But the whole community concept was something that was very big in co-working. And I started to realize that co-working wasn't doing anything for the community. So before this even happened, we decided that 50% of our events were going to be fun, where we just went out and had a chance to support local business and connect on a personal level. The other 50% were going to be how to support Kingston. So we're keeping those fundamentals. I think community is about supporting each other. And so we're going to start by having a conversation with our customers to say how we can support them. And then also how we can support something bigger than us. Because I think that's where community gets stronger, is when you're outward facing and you're supporting others, then that's where community gets strong. So certainly we're trying to pivot into an online world. It's challenging, but we're doing our best.
Now, I know you have a community app. Do you have any plans on maybe trying to convert some of those conversations or using that as a tool to more regularly connect with people and kind of chime on and just see how everybody's doing?
Yeah, we're even the platform we use, we think is quite basic. What we're trying to envision is how technology can pull together much more than we do today. The app we have has a basic sort of profile and a communication tool, but where we see it moving forward, we see technology being that really special tool that could theoretically allow people to share information better, share services, even the moving of money, so that what we're trying to move to is selling credits that can be very much kind of crypto, that allow fluidity between purchases of services, products. So we're going to rebuild our platform. We're in the process of doing that. So the one we have today is okay, but the one that we want to build moving forward is going to be even more advanced. Just another way that technology can help community thrive.
Amazing. And have you made any headway in terms of some of the topics that you spoke about earlier this week, like, I just, like for you and Melissa, your overhead is just next level to what a lot of us are experiencing. And I know that a lot of people are also in the same boat as you, where either they're fairly new in their first year of business, and it's been kind of difficult to navigate all of those things. So can you give us a bit of an update on where you're at and if you've learned anything new on that front?
Well, I think all community is built on real relationships. So I called every one of my customers and I had conversations with them about where they were at. And so it was something that started there. And so we're both in this together, and I navigated as much as I could by explaining the severity of it, and also understanding what was happening on their end. So I have about 150 customers. I've got through about 80 of them. I intend on calling every one of them and having a genuine conversation about what I can do to help, and then hopefully that translates into them wanting to help me. Just conversations is my sort of tool. And I encourage everyone to have conversations and I've done it with everyone, landlords, suppliers, everyone, just having real conversations. And I think that's what pays off in the end, is that they know that you're a real person.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I've received probably 6 surveys this week of people and local organizations asking how me and my business are surviving this COVID-19. And I don't even want to answer them because it drives me crazy knowing that that's how they think that they're helping the community. Can we talk about that stuff a little bit later? And I know it's important to gather that information so that they can go back to the funders or to the province and to the ministries or ministers and let them know kind of what that feeling is. But I just think it would be so much more effective in terms of doing exactly what you've adopted and just stopping and having that 10-minute conversation, because I think you're going to get way more real, raw data that way than just sending somebody to a 10-minute survey. So I commend you for doing that. I think that's great.
Thanks.
Anybody else want to talk about community on the panel? Let's check in on the poll here. I'll take that as a no. Okay, we are going to shift a little bit. Again, I'm just trying to be aware of time. We're going to shift a little bit and we're going to bring back John and Mike, and Braden's going to jump in on this conversation as well. I'm noticing a lot of people have gone radio silent online, and I think it's super important. And we've said this a few times now. It seems to be a bit of a reoccurring theme about how to talk to your audience right now. So the 3 of them have a strategy in place on how they're going to direct this conversation. So again, if you have anything that you want to add in the comments, that would be great. All right, who's starting?
Well, I think we figured, the 3 of us are creative services, and so we all have sort of very different approaches, and yet there is some overlap. So we figured we typically talk better if we talk to each other than if we answer questions. But we were, I think one of the biggest things right now is like the universal thing is now is not a time to stop selling or marketing, but it's going to be critically important to start understanding, like, tying into what John said earlier, like understanding the problems you're solving and understanding the value that you're going to be adding to your clients. And so now it's about looking at how you communicate and what's running. And if you have ads that were running from February or March, it's probably a good time to stop those and reevaluate your copy and reevaluate your language. But at the same time, it's a really great time to talk to people. And our approach from a storytelling perspective is always very like authentic and earnest. Rob's following and the way he communicates with his audience, he doesn't have to really change his style because his style works really well in how people want to consume content right now. They want an honest person who's going to tell them things how it is, and that's what helps people get through something like this. And so, John, from your side of things, like, how are you helping your clients right now adjust their strategies and their tactics and tweaking what they're doing?
Yeah, the first thing is understanding what's changed for their audience. And I think that's got to be the first thing for everybody is talking with your audience, but really seeking to understand how their life is different, because it's when you understand how it's different that you can evaluate how you can serve them in that context. So that's the first thing that brands need to focus on, I think. Yeah.
So if you were like a product or if you were, I think Melissa's a really great example, and Katie threw something really great in there, which was like the date night board game kind of hybrid concept. But like, how would you encourage people to look at what they do, whether if they're a product or retail or an artist? What are the kinds of things that you would encourage them to be looking at?
For sure. So this really comes back to how you've built your brand, and if this reveals cracks, now is a great time to be working on your business, especially with the free time that we have. But it's considering what's your purpose and what are you doing about it, right? Like when you understand how you serve your audience, that's going to inform what it is that you're going to be able to do. And so if you are focused on entertainment, there's a lot, and Melissa's a perfect example of this. There's a lot you can still do to entertain in this time of boredom, but the reason or how you're entertaining people might look a little different, right? And I don't want, like, it's not so broad as just entertaining people. Sometimes it's inspiring people. Sometimes it's allowing people to express themselves through art. For example, like this is way out in left field, but you can provide some of that do-it-yourself stuff on YouTube, like we talked about, that's going to help people experiment on their own or try something new in terms of painting. Like think of that fad of the painting classes of people gathering together. That's still doable online, right? It's different, but you can still serve that same purpose. And so if you're really clear on what your purpose is, that's what your objective is, and you're still building the same way, if that makes sense. But that's what I would be recommending and am recommending the focus on, is really reinforcing that purpose. And if you're not clear on that, then that's going to show itself. So get clear on that.
Yeah, I think realistically, at the end of the day, we're as business owners, whatever we provide is solving a problem for someone. And for a lot of people, the problem that we solved before all this happened has changed to be something different. So now it's a matter of getting in touch with your clients and rejigging everything that you thought you knew about your audience to educate yourself and understand how you can solve the new problems that they're having now that all this is going on.
And so how have you guys, I can speak from our perspective, because so we've gone kind of dark, right? We've done the opposite of of what Rob's done and Melissa's done. Is we haven't been posting a lot on Instagram and on our accounts, because our big challenge is we're not in production anymore. There's nothing to film, right? And so for us, we've been we've sort of been more or less shut down in terms of the work that we typically post about and what people typically see of us. And so we're going through a bit of a, how do we reposition or reframe that? Because now I spend most of my day sitting in front of a computer and writing, which is, not normally what I do. And so, now we've been trying to figure out, okay, we've been working on a bit of a repositioning as a brand anyway. So now I've had sort of the last 2 or 3 weeks to, I've been writing for 3 hours a day, which is something I've never had time to do before. And so I'm taking this as an opportunity to sort of rebuild our communications and how we talk and what is the content that we actually create. But what are you guys doing with your brands in terms of putting out content and changing your audience and changing your marketing?
Well, I mean, my biggest thing right now is that I'm looking into other avenues as to entertaining is probably not the best description of it, but I've been considering live streaming my studio sessions where I'll bring a product in and do a live stream of my entire shoot process. which I typically wouldn't do because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's setting up and things like that. But now that I have the time, I mean, I can justify taking that extra time to go through the streaming process. And now that I have the time to set that all up, I'll have it in the future when we're through all of this. It'll be a seamless process, and I can continue doing these things that I've set in place now that I've had the time. But I'm a lot like you. And in the first few weeks of all this, I just kind of went dark because there was no content, and I wasn't in a great place. Like, I was just bummed out the whole time and didn't really feel like doing it. But now that I'm kind of getting to a point where my mood is coming around and I'm realizing that this is going to be for a while, we need to figure out how to keep the ship afloat. It's coming time to really figure out what I'm going to do about that and still generate content.
Yeah, I'll jump in on here too. I've changed my conversation a little bit online. As somebody who does coaching and often has a role to keep people accountable, I've gone into kick people in the ass mode. So some of my posts are pretty direct in terms of stop planning, start doing, and that kind of stuff, because everybody's scrolling their feeds right now. If somebody sees something that they just needed to hear, it could help them just continue to move forward with what they were thinking on moving forward, instead of getting stuck in all of the details and making it perfect, when right now that stuff doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I mean, I have a strategy in place that I'm slowly working towards. Right now, it's to do as I say, not as I do, because I'm struggling for time to invest into it right now, which is good. But the hard thing with being a solopreneur too is there's also the personal side, and there's a lot to invest as a human in other people right now. And so that's also taking up a significant portion of my time, which I'm happy to do, and it's a good investment. But what I'm really trying to build is resources that support my clients or businesses that could potentially be my clients. And so what that is I'm continuously working on this, but anytime that there's a specific need that a client will deal with, or I deal with, or a shift in how platforms change, or things that are being learned, everything focused on brands thriving, because that's ultimately why I exist as a company. It's establishing that so it can be an asset and help people understand what they can do on their own. Because some brands, they're just not a fit as a client, but there's still things you can do to help them and educate that way, and I'm okay with that. And then for others, they can be past clients that I've worked with them and worked myself out of a job, which is usually the priority. And if I've done my job well, that should be the case. I'm not someone who's going to stay long term with the production side of stuff. But there's a lot of things to help with implementation, understanding from the foundation that's been built. And so there's a lot of that can be that reinforcement or that checking in later on. And that's continuously adding value. So that's what I'm working towards. And for those of you who have a lot of time on your hands, now's a really good time to be investing in your own business and to establish that type of stuff. Especially, like, a good example to motivate this is if a client or someone you're selling to has a rebuttal and why it won't work, well, take that to heart and then answer that, but write it down, right? Because it's not about convincing people. It's about communicating value and helping people. And so for some clients, it might not be the right fit, and you might not be able to help them, or it might not provide the value they need. But sometimes there can be holes poked into your approach that you need to do a better job communicating. And so taking those prompts to write about what it is that you do and how you can help people, that's building this long-term approach to onboard people with a passive sales approach, if that makes sense. Like, it's a passive call to action that's slowly onboarding. And so that's what I'm working towards, but it is a slow process.
Caleb had a question too, just on right now companies are being run by their controllers and the mandates to cut costs. So the marketing and sale has to penetrate that reality. Caleb, I would say it depends on it depends on the scope of and size of company that you work with. Like, so for us, for example, we do work with some smaller nonprofits, and a lot of those companies or a lot of those brands from a nonprofit world, their budget is fixed. And so something like this isn't actually affecting them in the same way because their marketing spend was planned already. We also have a few clients in the States who are in a totally different scenario, and they're on like hardcore shutdown, but they're also big brands that need to continue talking. And so we just went through a sort of a strange negotiation on a project that ended up with, probably 5 times the budget than we thought we were going to get. We thought it was this little project that was coming in, and through the conversations, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they greenlit it because they know that they need to entirely rebuild how they're communicating right now. So, because we're a communications company and a lot of what we do is outbound and helping brands communicate, we're having really different conversations. But if we were a product right now, we would have a really hard time getting people to purchase more of something unless we made PPE, right? But so I think it's changing your approach in that. And then when it comes to your own marketing, I think there's a lot there around there are some really effective grassroots ways that you can market. There's some really inexpensive ways. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those on Tuesday from a video perspective, right? Just how to shoot some nice looking video with a phone and really simple setups, and you can do a lot, and your audience is going to be okay with content not looking as polished as it normally would, as long as you're authentic and honest about the reality of what that is right now. People don't necessarily need to, see a crazy produced, $500,000 Ford commercial right now. They want to see what are the dealerships doing to make their life better when they buy a vehicle. If they were going to buy, it's a bad example because no one's going to buy a car right now. But it's that idea, right, of modifying your offer and changing it and finding some really grassroots ways that you can talk to clients that need that. I think that'd be my approach. What about you guys?
I think you're absolutely right. Right now, a big portion of the content that's being put out is less about selling and more about educating your client on how your sales process goes now that it's completely changed and has to be totally different, or educating your client on the fact that you are still open and there are still ways to, for instance, for me, my business can run as usual. All of my meetings can be done virtually. Product can be shipped to my studio. I can shoot it in studio, ship it back, and then take payment virtually or through any number of digital platforms, right? So my business doesn't have to stop. As if anything, it is probably one of the few businesses that can operate almost seamlessly as usual. But it did shift a little bit as to, the meetings are no longer in a coffee shop. They're at home and usually not wearing any pants, like things like that. It's, it's just slightly different. And it's a matter of letting your clients know that you're still there, still available, and still staying safe with everything that's going on.
Yeah, and I think also relating to how they're feeling right now during all of this too. I mean, I know as much as you say business can be as usual for you, you are being impacted by this. People are thinking twice before they invest in a photographer for their new Shopify store and all of those types of things too. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, things can operate as usual, but they're not, because right now everybody's still really worried about how it's going to be moving forward and whether or not they can afford to have high-end photography done and things like that. So I think it'll level out in once we find a way to navigate through all of this and continue business while this is going on, while we're maintaining the social distancing. But that's just a matter of time.
I also think it's a good time for you to reintroduce yourself to your audience right now on social media. I've been seeing a lot of comments of people that are following new small business accounts because a friend of theirs shared their account. So now they're going and following, and they're identifying all these new small businesses that they had never even known existed. So those people are new to you. They don't know what you do, how you do it, who you are. So don't be afraid to show up and have those conversations too.
Yeah, of course.
Getting back to Caleb's question there a bit, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the question, but I think the approach, because unfortunately this is the reality we're dealing with, but the approach needs to be sensitive but not apologetic. As a Canadian, I think this is something that we battle all the time, is this extreme politeness. And so we can't be apologetic when we sell. Anyone who's in sales knows this. But there is a time to be sensitive. And something that really helped me in terms of what to consider and what to think through before you share content was David Baker and Blair Enns shared this. Look them up if you don't know. Huge inspiration for me. But before you share, think through why this, why now, why us, right? And if you can answer those questions, then it's appropriate. If you can't, you're just adding noise. And now is not a good time to be adding noise. Right? So yes, we're screaming content, create, but you have to do it smart and it has to serve a purpose. If you're just adding noise, yeah, you could fall into the entertainment side and people are looking for that and they're consuming that more than ever right now. But in terms of selling and communicating with businesses, I am tired of getting the emails that are explaining how the business operates when they don't need to communicate that because it's literally an online relationship and it doesn't impact either of us. So why did I need to get a big press release? You know what I mean? Like the first couple were really considerate. By like the 50th, it's like annoying because everyone's doing it. So if you can think through why this, whatever it is that you're planning to share, why now, why is it appropriate to share it now, and why should we be the ones sharing it? I think that's going to really help both your sales approach, but just as you produce content. And that doesn't mean don't produce content. That just means think it through and how it applies. We're back to helping, not just selling. You're on mute there, Katie.
Muted, Katie.
I'm back. I just popped a question down in the chat and would love to hear from everybody that answered the poll in the beginning, because it was actually quite even, but some of you are feeling like you don't want to bother people and that you need to start, you just probably don't know where or how to start. Are you feeling better based on this conversation, or is there anything else before we kind of shut down shop here that you were hoping that maybe give you the bit of a push to keep moving that forward and keep having those conversations? Is anybody on the panel feeling like they're having a hard time having those conversations or kind of selling? I've had a few people ask me to post their offer because it seems less salesy, if you will. So like if somebody's kind of made a pivot and they have an offer and they're too afraid to post it themselves, but it's in alignment with some of the work that I do. So I don't mind posting and sharing those types of things. You know what I mean? Anybody else seeing any of that?
Yeah, there's a question in the Q&A too from Josh in the broadcast here. He wanted to know, do you see any major upcoming factors that need to be considered when marketing as B2B as compared to B2C? John, you're probably good to speak to that. Yeah, I struggled with this at first. I was actually sick early on in all of this, so there was a lot of thinking time where I couldn't do anything. And so fortunately, I wasn't handcuffed by fear when I was working because I couldn't do anything when I was like just trying to sort through how to react. My concern, especially with the whole B2B thing, is how can I sell my service when that same money could be taking care of their employees? And I felt like I had to, it wasn't right. Like before building your brand, you need to start taking care of your employees. And it took me a while to work through that because I still believe take care of your employees, of course. And there's a lot of businesses stepping up this way, which is good to see. But I had to come back around to how it is I can actually help. And part of this panel is part of that, right? Because a lot of what I can do is help some of these businesses that are struggling and are right on the verge of closing their doors, right? Now, the way I've built my business is I'm not ironically, I'll drink the Kool-Aid. I built based on a brand as opposed to like, I don't advertise and I don't direct market. So it's very much my positioning that wins my work. And so I don't go out after people. So that has been unaffected, right?
But in terms of how to engage the conversation, that's what I had to wrestle with to get there. But then once I understood there is a real opportunity, now a lot of that has actually just been free, because right now it's about helping people, right? Giving some of that advice, and a lot of people can work through that on themselves. And then also there's a lot of these businesses that are most at risk that they may not be a client of mine anyways. So there's still a lot to do. But then there's others, like I have several clients that are doing well, right? So there's still things that I can do. So, but yeah, that I struggled with that.
Josh, does that answer your question? I see David here. I'm just entertaining my Instagram audience right now. I think that's great. Thanks, John. So I'm going to assume that answers his question.
Yeah, and
thanks.
I would just tag on to that. It goes back to what John and a few of us have mentioned as well, right? Which is just, especially on a B2B side, like most of us creative services we're solving problems for brands anyway, right? And so, going to what John said, and and I'm one with employees, right? So my priority is to take care of my team before, we do things, and we're spending money and doing things like that. But there's a balance to that we recognize as well, which is like, I needed to pay for Zoom, and I needed to pay for Crowdcast, and I needed to pay for all of these sort of digital tools that enable me to be able to do my job and deliver our service at a high level. And so, there are brands out there that know that they still need design work, or they still need photography, or they still need video. They still need to communicate with their audience to be able to sell their service. And if you can position yourself and help them through that problem, you're going to build very loyal customers. And then on top of that, if you can, find ways to be creative with solving their problem. So, I was saying it earlier, in like payment plans, or just tiering your payment, right? Like, if something costs $5,000, well, charge them $1,250 over the next 4 months to help them get through it, because it'll be easier on cash flow, instead of saying, no, that's due today because that's my policy. So it's just being flexible. It's just being creative, and making sure that, the thing that you're doing for a client, especially if it's B2B, is helping them solve a problem that they're working through at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. And like some of those big organizations where there's a leader of an organization, they've never been through any of this either. So they don't even know how to have these conversations. So if they are kind of stuck in the government jargon, which we're seeing a lot of people getting confused, and they don't know if they qualify for this and they don't know if they qualify for that, you may be able to help them get that message clearer in terms of what they're going to post online and the conversation that they're going to have. So depending on who your audience is and what service you offer, it's kind of thinking of it from that perspective too. Because those organizations are still issuing paychecks to their staff. They're still running business as usual. They're probably all working remotely. They may have taken on extra work, or they have a reduced workload. So I think it's super important to remember that too, that it's okay to sell, because there are still people that have money coming in. I just noticed we've got another question here from Daniel. Can someone share any experience on convincing client regarding the value of your service during this tough time, when every client's first priority is to stop paying for services such as creative and design? John, you want to give that one a jab too?
Sure. Yeah. I'm just reading it to make sure I understand it properly. But yeah, it's communicating the value, right, during this tough time. And so, yeah, I mean, I think this is something that all I know as a creative struggle with year round, right? All the time, regardless of any scenario, properly communicating your value. Regardless of the time, but still appropriate, obviously now, in order to communicate value well, you need to understand what problem you solve, right? So if you understand the problem in which you solve, you're presenting an option or multiple options on how that business or that brand can overcome that problem, right? Or achieve whatever results. When you present those options, they're looking at them and deciding what the value is for themselves, and ultimately they're the ones who sell it. Like, unless you're going for the car salesman approach, which I don't think most of us are wanting to go for, you're just providing solutions and communicate. Like, they need to have, the problem has to be significant enough that they're willing to part with X amount of dollars to overcome it, right? And so it's the understanding of the problem, I guess, is what I'm going to fall back on for this, that they see more value in overcoming that problem or achieving those results than the money it costs to do it, right? And so you're selling a solution, not a commodity or a tactic or any of that. And I mean, that separates a lot of people in our industry.
I think there's also a belief in what you offer that's really important, right? Like, I know the types of problems that we can solve in a really strong way. You know, there's certain clients right now that I would just say it's, you know, we'd have a conversation around like what can they actually afford and what's the revenue stream, because, you know, same with John, I don't want to take money out of a business that can't afford to pay us or would have to sacrifice something else that's more important to their business just to make a project with us work. But so it's really understanding the value or having belief in the value of what you offer, because, you know, there's hundreds of companies right now that I'm watching their video work come out and their storytelling come out, like that they've pivoted in the last week, and it's like you like just so tone deaf to an audience, and you're like, oh, you are not helping your brand right now, and you're scrambling to do something. And so those are the brands that I'm looking at and going like, okay, how can I help brands, either these brands or brands like these, to not make these same mistakes? And that's where my team brings a ton of value. And then we've just had to get creative in terms of what our offering is as well, right? Like, we're not charging for production right now because we can't go anywhere and film anything, right? So it's getting creative in terms of also how can we deliver something of value. And right now, there's a lot of value in just communication and how people are writing. And so we've been doing a lot of storytelling consulting, because it's like we just don't know how to pivot and talk about selling something that, you know, is more of a commodity in a time like this. And so it's helping, how do we turn that corner for them?
Yeah, and that really falls back on your positioning. Positioning is really focused on how you're different, because if someone else does the same thing and does it cheaper, then your value goes way down.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I think Melissa has something that she wanted to share, and I think it's a pretty valuable point. I'll make sure if we could bring her back in so that she could get that across, if everybody's good.
Yeah, you can kick me out.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Mike. Hey, we have him on recording saying that he's going to do that thing, right? So we may have to leverage that later.
Okay, here you come, Melissa.
He already forgot.
Yeah, so basically the only thing I kind of wanted to bring up is that although we are all trying to figure out ways to maybe pivot our business or figure out a way to kind of bring some money in through our businesses at this time, I think it's really realistic to understand that businesses might not be able to afford our services right now. Like, we are all in a struggling position, and I can even say for myself, like, we've had to cut out a lot of expenses just to be able to make sure that we survive this. And that is our goal. Our goal is to be able to survive this period and make sure that, let's say in 4 months from now, hopefully it'll be sooner, but 4 months from now when we reopen, we are going to be able to reopen strong and be okay. So although you might be kind of approaching your clients or your customers at this time, just kind of err on the side of caution with it as well, because I've had local organizations reach out to me recently, and I'm not a client of theirs, just being like, hey, we'd love to make a sale with you and push our product onto you, essentially. And I'm like, this is so tone deaf. Why would I be signing on to a $5,000 a month marketing package right now? I don't even know who you are. So just keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of no's right now from businesses, I think. Not to kind of try to be a negative Nancy, but kind of just trying to be realistic. Because if we're all kind of feeling that stress of finances right now as a small business, other small businesses are feeling it as well. So with strong value proposition, hopefully you can kind of be able to make those sales to keep your business going, but don't be discouraged if people are saying no. Like, we're all in the exact same boat here, and we're just trying to make it all work.
Yeah, I think that's relevant for customer to business also. Like if you're selling to, like even for you, Melissa, like some people aren't in a position to buy a board game or to buy alcohol right now. It's more important for them to put food on the table for their family, right? I think that's an all around good point to kind of end on here. Anybody else? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, value should not be convinced. You can communicate, but it has to be received, and they have to see the value. You cannot convince it.
Love that.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Melissa said, right? Which is like, you know, we're having these conversations from a position of, you know, this is the value we add as businesses to the community. And so, you know, the information that we're offering and what we're sharing is, you know, our experience in navigating this crisis, you know, and I won't pretend that, you know, we lost like low six figures in work in about 48 hours the second week of March, right? So we've been hit by this pretty hard, you know, and went through a couple of weeks of adjustment and how do we adapt and how do we get the team home? How do, you know, we have to share the silliest size files back and forth trying to get edits done. Like, you know, we're shuttling hard drives between houses because it's the only way we can move a project, because we have a project we're editing right now that's 1.5 terabytes, and I'm in the country, and there's, you know, it would take me a month to download, and so, you know, it's being realistic in the situation, but also knowing that, you know, the hope for all of us as business owners is that we're going to get through this and we're going to, you know, find the ways to survive and thrive on the other end of it. And, you know, we really want to give you the tools to be able to help grow and adapt and make your business survive this, because we're all making hard decisions about, do we lay people off? How fast do we lay people off? Do we qualify for all the weird things with slightly different language that are being announced for funding? Like, we're all going through those same things, but, you know, the hope is that, you know, as a group, we can empower you with some information to be able to make some small differences in your business that, you know, as we navigate through the next few months, are going to help you, you know, be able to close a few more sales or sell a few more things or adapt your business in a way you never thought you could. So I think it's important that, you know, there's a reality to the situation, and then there's also the hope of, you know, we're going to build something really special and grow through it.
We'll leave everybody with that. I mean, I don't see any other questions here. Excellent. Well, we went a little bit over our timeline, so we hope we didn't take up too much of your time today, or hope we kind of shed some light on a few things and gave you the kick in the ass that you need to go and do some stuff. So on that note, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you on Tuesday. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.